Life, my dear friends, can sometimes feel like an uphill battle. The trials and tribulations we face may seem insurmountable. But when life gets tough, don't hold back. Pour out your heart to God. Let those fears spill out and hand over the heavy burdens you've been carrying. Lay them at the feet of God as if saying, "All right, I can't handle this alone. I need your help." This act of surrender is where the magic happens. With every word you speak, you're not just talking to the ceiling or into thin air. No, you're drawing closer to the divine, building a connection that goes beyond our earthly understanding. It's like making a call to the heavens. And trust me, someone's on the other end, ready to listen and provide comfort. In that sacred dialogue, you'll find a peace that surpasses what the world can offer, a peace that settles deep within your soul, reassuring you that you're not navigating this crazy journey alone. Consider the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1. She poured out her heart to God in her anguish and bitterness over her barrenness. She didn't hold back her sorrow but cried out to the Lord with raw honesty. God heard her prayer and blessed her with a son, Samuel, who became a great prophet. Hannah's story reminds us that when we lay our burdens at God's feet, He listens and responds in His perfect way and timing. Another example is the book of Psalms, filled with David's honest prayers, cries for help, and praises to God. David's life was marked by turmoil and challenges, yet he consistently turned to God in prayer, finding solace and strength. In our modern lives, we can also find examples of people who have experienced God's comfort through prayer. Think of a friend or family member who faced a severe illness or a challenging situation and found peace and strength through their faith. These testimonies show that God's presence is real and active in our lives today. So, my dear friends, whenever you feel overwhelmed, remember that you are not alone. God is with you, listening and ready to provide the comfort and peace that only He can give. In the Gospel of Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 to 30, Jesus invites us, saying, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." These words offer an assurance that when we come to Jesus with our burdens, He provides rest and relief. Everyday stories of people who have found solace in faith further emphasize the power of laying our troubles at God's feet. Imagine a single parent juggling work, home, and raising children alone. Through prayer and trust in God, they find strength and endurance beyond human capability, experiencing God's providence in miraculous ways. These personal victories, grounded in faith, remind us of the ever-present help and comfort that God provides. Additionally, the story of Elijah under the broom tree in 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 4 to 8 shows how God meets us in our moments of despair. Feeling utterly defeated, Elijah prayed for death. Instead, God provided him with food, water, and rest, replenishing his strength for the journey ahead. This story reassures us that God knows our needs and responds with compassion and provision, even when we feel at our lowest. Reflect on Jesus' own invitation in John chapter 14, verse 27. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Jesus promises us a peace that transcends all understanding, a peace that calms our anxieties and brings comfort to our weary souls. Consider also the example of Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9 to 10. When Paul faced a thorn in the flesh, he prayed for its removal. God responded, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul then realized that his weaknesses allowed God's power to shine through, and he took comfort in God's strength during his struggles. This teaches us that even in our weaknesses and burdens, God's grace is enough to carry us through. The story of the bleeding woman in Mark chapter 5, verse 25 to 34 is another testament to faith in God's responsiveness. She suffered for 12 years and found no relief from doctors, but one touch of Jesus' garment healed her instantly. This act of faith underscores the power of trusting in God's ability to transform our deepest pains into profound testimonies of His grace. Often, our suffering arises from our stubborn resistance to the natural ebb and flow of life. We cling tightly to our desires and plans. When life takes an unexpected turn, we resist with all our might. We struggle against the currents of change, refusing to let go of our preconceived notions of how things should be. But what if we were to loosen our grip, to release our white-knuckled hold on the reins of control? What if we were to surrender to a higher power, trusting in a divine plan that surpasses our limited understanding? Surrendering to the divine doesn't mean resigning ourselves to fate or passively accepting whatever comes our way. Rather, it's an act of profound faith, a conscious decision to align our will with the will of God. It's about letting go of our ego-driven desires and surrendering to a higher purpose, trusting that God's plan is far greater and more intricate than anything we could ever conceive. It's acknowledging that despite our best efforts, we are not the architects of our destiny. There is a greater force at work, guiding us along the path of life. In that surrender, in that relinquishing of control, we find a profound sense of freedom and relief. We no longer bear the weight of the world on our shoulders. Instead, we entrust our cares, worries, and hopes to a higher power. It's a paradoxical truth. In letting go, we gain everything. We gain peace of mind, knowing that we are not alone in our journey. We gain clarity, seeing our lives through the lens of divine providence. We gain freedom from the burden of trying to control every aspect of our lives, and freedom to embrace the flow of life with open arms. Consider the story of Joseph in Genesis chapter 37 to 50. Sold into slavery by his brothers and later imprisoned under false accusations, Joseph faced tremendous hardships. Yet, he remained faithful to God and surrendered his life to His divine plan. In the end, Joseph rose to a position of great power in Egypt, saving many lives during a severe famine. Joseph's story illustrates how surrendering to God's will can lead to extraordinary outcomes. even when the path seems uncertain and filled with challenges. Look also at the example of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, as recorded in Matthew chapter 26, verse 36 to 46. Jesus, facing immense suffering and the burden of the cross, prayed to God, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." His willingness to surrender to God's plan, despite the agony ahead, exemplifies the ultimate act of trust and obedience. Jesus' prayer in Gethsemane teaches us the importance of aligning our will with God's will, even when it requires great sacrifice. In our own lives, we can find examples of surrender and trust leading to profound peace and outcomes. Think of someone who, after facing a career setback or personal loss, decides to trust in God's greater plan. By surrendering their own desires and fears, they often find new opportunities and blessings they could never have imagined. This act of letting go and letting God can transform our perspective and bring us into alignment with His perfect will. The Apostle Paul experienced this profound surrender on his journey to Damascus. Blinded and transformed by his encounter with Jesus, Paul surrendered his previous life and ambitions, dedicating himself entirely to God's mission. His transformation led him to become one of Christianity's most influential apostles, spreading the gospel far and wide. Paul's life exemplifies how surrendering to God's will can lead to unexpected and powerful outcomes. Similarly, the story of Jonah demonstrates the struggle with surrendering to God's will. Initially, Jonah ran from God's command to preach to Nineveh. After being swallowed by a great fish and praying for deliverance, Jonah surrendered to God's plan, ultimately leading to the repentance and salvation of the Ninevites. Jonah's story shows that while we may resist, surrendering to God's will can bring about profound and far-reaching impacts. Reflect also on the life of Esther. Faced with the daunting task of saving her people from genocide, Esther initially hesitated, fearing for her life. However, she surrendered to God's will, saying, "If I perish, I perish." Esther chapter 4, verse 16. Her bravery and faith led to the deliverance of the Jewish people, demonstrating that surrendering to God's plan can result in extraordinary outcomes. The story of Gideon is another profound example. Called by God to lead Israel against the Midianites, Gideon doubted his abilities and sought signs from God. Despite his fears, he ultimately surrendered to God's call, leading a small army to a miraculous victory. Judges chapter 6 to 7. Gideon's story shows that surrendering to God's will, even with hesitations, can lead to remarkable victories. King Jehoshaphat's reliance on God's guidance in 2 Chronicles chapter 20 highlights another aspect of divine surrender. Facing a vast enemy army, Jehoshaphat prayed, "We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." God's answer led to a miraculous victory without them having to fight. This story underscores how surrendering to God's guidance can result in divine intervention and triumph. In our relentless pursuit of a brighter and better future, it's easy to get caught up in the chaos of striving for more. We set goals, dream big, and often find ourselves fixated on what lies ahead, forgetting to acknowledge the richness of the present moment. Pause for a moment. Breathe. and look around you. In the simplicity of the now, there are treasures waiting to be discovered. The air filling your lungs, the steady rhythm of your heartbeat. These are not mere biological functions, but the very essence of life bestowed upon you. Gratitude for the present is not just about counting your blessings. It's about becoming acutely aware of the beauty that surrounds you in the here and now. It's about recognizing the simple joys that weave through the fabric of your existence, often overshadowed by the clamor of daily life. Consider the warmth of sunlight on your face, the laughter of loved ones, the taste of a nourishing meal. These are not trivial occurrences, but sacred moments deserving of your attention. When you take the time to be grateful for these small, seemingly mundane aspects of life, you open yourself to the abundance of God's grace. Gratitude is a transformative force. It shifts your perspective from scarcity to abundance, from discontent to fulfillment. As you cultivate a thankful heart, you become a magnet for blessings, drawing towards you the richness of God's grace that permeates every corner of your life. So, dear friends, let us not be so consumed by the pursuit of tomorrow that we neglect the gifts of today. Practice gratitude for the present, and watch as your awareness blossoms into a profound connection with the divine. In this sacred awareness, you'll find that your life is already brimming with blessings waiting to be acknowledged and appreciated. Consider the example of Paul and Silas in Acts chapter 16, verse 16 to 40. Despite being beaten and imprisoned, they prayed and sang hymns to God, showing gratitude even in dire circumstances. Their faith and gratitude led to a miraculous earthquake that opened the prison doors, freeing them and leading the jailer and his household to salvation. This story highlights the power of gratitude and faith, even in the most challenging situations. In our daily lives, we can practice gratitude by taking a moment each day to reflect on the blessings we have received. Keep a gratitude journal, jotting down things you are thankful for each day. Share your blessings with others, spreading positivity and encouragement. By focusing on the present and acknowledging God's gifts, we can cultivate a heart of gratitude that draws us closer to Him. Jesus also emphasized the importance of gratitude in the story of the 10 lepers in Luke chapter 17, verse 11 to 19. After healing 10 men of leprosy, only one returned to give thanks. Jesus asked, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? This story teaches us the value of recognizing and expressing gratitude for God's blessings. The one leper who returned to thank Jesus received not only physical healing but also spiritual wholeness. In practical terms, gratitude can transform our outlook on life. Imagine someone who regularly practices gratitude by acknowledging the support of their family, the beauty of nature, and the small victories in their daily routine. This practice can lead to a more positive and fulfilled life, drawing us closer to God and helping us to appreciate His constant presence in our lives. Additionally, consider the story of Daniel in the lion's den in Daniel chapter 6. Despite the threat of death, Daniel continued to pray and give thanks to God 3 times a day. His unwavering gratitude and faith led to his miraculous deliverance from the lions. This powerful testimony shows how gratitude can sustain us through even the most life-threatening situations. reinforcing our trust in God's protection and provision. By practicing gratitude, we can shift our focus from what we lack to the abundance that God has already provided. This shift in perspective helps us to see God's hand in every aspect of our lives, deepening our relationship with Him and enriching our daily experiences. In another example, the widow of Zarephath, who hosted Elijah, shows great gratitude and faith in 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 8 to 16. Despite having only a handful of flour and a little oil, she trusted Elijah's promise from God that her supplies would not run out. And her gratitude and faith were rewarded as she, Elijah, and her household ate for many days, demonstrating how God's provision and blessings follow a thankful heart. In modern life, think of someone who, despite financial struggles, regularly thanks God for His provision and faithfully gives to others. They often find that their needs are met in unexpected ways, illustrating the truth that a grateful heart opens the door to God's abundant blessings. Consider also the example of Jesus giving thanks before feeding the 5,000 in John chapter 6, verse 11. Despite having only 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus gave thanks, and a miraculous provision followed, feeding thousands. This story teaches us that gratitude, even in seemingly insufficient circumstances, can lead to extraordinary outcomes. Reflect also on the story of Hezekiah in 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 1 to 11. Facing imminent death, Hezekiah prayed and expressed gratitude for God's past faithfulness. God extended his life by 15 years, showing that a heart of gratitude and prayer can lead to miraculous turnarounds. This example underscores the importance of gratitude even in our most desperate times. In our fast-paced world, patience is often viewed as a virtue in short supply. We live in an age of instant gratification, where we expect results at the snap of our fingers and solutions to our problems with the push of a button. Yet, in the grand scheme of things, the concept of time takes on a different dimension when viewed through the lens of divine providence. God's timing is not bound by the constraints of human impatience. It operates on a higher plane, guided by wisdom and foresight that far surpass our limited understanding. Every delay, every setback, every moment of waiting is intricately woven into the fabric of a divine plan, a plan that unfolds with precision and purpose far beyond the scope of our comprehension. In the midst of life's challenges and uncertainties, it's natural to feel frustrated by the seeming delays in our journey. We question why things aren't happening as quickly as we'd like, why obstacles seem to stand in our way, why prayers appear to go unanswered. But in those moments of doubt and frustration, it's essential to remember that God's timing is perfect. Trust that every twist and turn in your life's path is orchestrated by a loving and benevolent Creator who has a plan for your life that far exceeds your own expectations. Have faith that the delays are not denials but rather opportunities for growth, learning, and refinement. Embrace the setbacks as stepping stones on your journey toward fulfillment and purpose. On the waiting, find solace in the knowledge that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating the perfect symphony of your life. Consider the story of Abraham and Sarah in Genesis chapter 15 to 21. They were promised a son, but they had to wait many years for that promise to be fulfilled. The faith wavered at times, but ultimately, Isaac was born in God's perfect timing, This story illustrates that God's promises are fulfilled according to His schedule, not ours. Abraham and Sarah's journey of faith and patience is a powerful reminder that waiting on God's timing is always worth it. Another profound example is the story of Moses, called by God to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Moses faced numerous delays and challenges, including Pharaoh's stubbornness and the Israelites' own doubts and rebellions. Despite these setbacks, Moses remained faithful to God's plan, leading his people through the Red Sea and toward the Promised Land. Moses' life demonstrates the importance of patience and trust in God's timing, even when the journey is long and difficult. Only in our own lives, we might face delays in achieving our goals or answers to our prayers. Whether it's waiting for a job opportunity, healing, or a breakthrough in a personal struggle, we must remember that God's timing is perfect. Reflect on past experiences where God's timing proved to be better than your own plans. Trust that He knows what is best for you and that His plans are for your good. Consider someone waiting for a significant life event, such as marriage or starting a family. The waiting period can be challenging, filled with doubts and uncertainties. Yet, trusting in God's timing, they often find that when the right time comes, everything falls into place in ways they could never have orchestrated themselves. This waiting period becomes a time of preparation, growth, and deeper faith. Similarly, think of David's journey to becoming king. Anointed by Samuel as a young shepherd, David had to wait many years before he ascended to the throne. During this time, he faced numerous trials, including fleeing from King Saul's attempts on his life. Despite the hardships, David trusted in God's timing and plan, ultimately becoming one of Israel's greatest kings. His story exemplifies the faith and patience required to wait for God's perfect timing. So, my dear friends, trust in God's timing. Surrender your impatience, your doubts, and your fears, and embrace the unfolding of your life with a sense of faith and expectancy. For in God's perfect timing, you will find that every delay, every setback, every moment of waiting has a purpose and a meaning far beyond what you could ever imagine. In the New Testament, Mary and Martha experienced a profound lesson in God's timing when their brother Lazarus fell ill. Despite their urgent pleas, Jesus delayed his visit. By the time he arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Yet, Jesus performed one of his greatest miracles by raising Lazarus from the dead, demonstrating that God's timing, though often perplexing, is always perfect and purposeful. John chapter 11, verse 1 to 44. In practical life, consider someone waiting for a job promotion that seems to take forever. They might feel overlooked and frustrated, but in trusting God's timing, they often find that when the promotion finally comes, it is at a time when they are more prepared and capable of handling the new responsibilities. This waiting period can foster growth, patience, and trust in God's perfect plan. Additionally, the story of Joseph waiting for his dreams to be fulfilled provides another powerful example. Sold into slavery and imprisoned, Joseph's dreams seemed far from reality. However, God's perfect timing elevated him to a position of power in Egypt, fulfilling his dreams and saving many lives during a famine. Genesis chapter 41. His story underscores the importance of trusting in God's timing, even when our circumstances seem bleak. Consider also the story of Noah. God instructed Noah to build an ark in preparation for a flood that would come many years later. Noah patiently followed God's instructions, despite facing ridicule and doubt from those around him. In the end, his patience and obedience were rewarded when the floodwaters came, and he and his family were saved. Genesis chapter 6 to 9. Noah's story is a testament to the importance of trusting in God's timing and plan, even when it seems illogical to the world. Reflect on the story of Hannah again in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 19 to 20. Her years of barrenness were met with faithful prayer and waiting. When God answered her, it was in his perfect timing, blessing her with Samuel, who would go on to become a significant prophet. This reminds us that God's timing is always aligned with his greater purposes for our lives. Life is filled with moments of darkness, times when the shadows seem overwhelming and despair threatens to consume us. It is during these challenging periods that we must remember the eternal truth. Even in the darkest of nights, there exists a flicker of light. And that light, my friends, is the divine presence of God. We picture it as an eternal flame, unwavering and steadfast, cutting through the blackest of shadows. It is the beacon that guides us when all other lights fade, the unwavering source of hope that illuminates the path through the darkest nights of our lives. It's easy to lose sight of this light when surrounded by the trials and tribulations of life. Yet, it is precisely in those moments of deepest darkness that the divine flame shines most brilliantly. Even when you can't perceive it, have faith that it's there, burning brightly within your soul, ready to dispel the shadows that threaten to engulf you. No matter how deep the darkness may seem, trust in the promise of divine intervention. It's akin to the approaching dawn after a long, arduous night. Just as the sun rises to banish the darkness, so too does divine intervention cast away the shadows that linger in your life. Faith is the key that unlocks the door to this divine intervention. It is the unwavering belief that no matter how dire the circumstances, there is a higher power working tirelessly on your behalf. This faith is not a passive acceptance of suffering, but an active recognition that with God's presence, every challenge is an opportunity for transformation and growth. As we navigate the twists and turns of our lives, it's natural to encounter moments of suffering, pain, and despair. Yet amidst the darkness, there exists a glimmer of hope, a promise of redemption that shines like a beacon in the night. Consider the story of Job in the Bible. Job experienced immense suffering and loss, yet he remained faithful to God, even in his darkest moments. He trusted that God was with him. In the end, God restored Job's fortunes, blessing him with even more than he had before. Job's story is a powerful testament to the enduring light of God's presence, even in the midst of our greatest trials. In our everyday lives, we can see examples of people who have found light in their darkest moments. Think of someone who has overcome a significant hardship, such as a serious illness or a personal loss, through their faith in God. Their stories of resilience and hope can inspire us to trust in God's promise of divine intervention. Consider the story of the Israelites at the Red Sea in Exodus chapter 14. Faced with the seemingly insurmountable obstacle of the sea before them and Pharaoh's army behind them, they felt hopeless and trapped. Yet, God intervened, parting the waters and providing a path to safety. This miraculous intervention illustrates how God's light can shine through the darkest moments, providing a way where there seems to be no way. Similarly, in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul faced numerous trials, including imprisonment, shipwrecks, and beatings. Despite these hardships, Paul never lost faith. In Acts chapter 16, verse 25, while imprisoned with Silas, Paul prayed and sang hymns to God. Suddenly, an earthquake shook the prison, opening the doors and loosening their chains. This miraculous event led to the conversion of the jailer and his family. Paul's unwavering faith in God's intervention turned a dire situation into a testimony of God's power and grace. In another example, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego faced a fiery furnace for refusing to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's golden image. Despite the king's threats, they stood firm in their faith, intervened, sending an angel to protect them, and they emerged from the furnace unscathed. Daniel chapter 3. This powerful story illustrates how God's presence can shield us in our most dangerous and desperate moments. Surrendering ourselves to the embrace of the divine, we open our hearts to the transformative power of God's love and grace. It is in this sacred surrender that we find a path to redemption, a path that leads us from the depths of despair to the heights of divine purpose. Your suffering, my friends, is not in vain. It is not a punishment inflicted upon you by a distant and uncaring deity. Rather, it is a crucible through which God molds and shapes us, transforming our pain into purpose, our struggles into strength. Trust in the infinite love of the Creator, for His love knows no bounds. In His hands, even the darkest moments of our lives are infused with meaning and significance. Like a master craftsman shaping a rough stone into a radiant gem, God uses our suffering to refine us, to purify us, to bring out the beauty hidden within. So, my dear friends, let the promise of redemption be the guiding light that illuminates your path. Let it be the anchor that steadies you amidst life's storms. For in surrendering to God's love and grace, you will find not only comfort and strength, but also a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in your life. May the grace of God be with you all, my beloved friends, and may you find solace in the understanding that your suffering is not the end, but a sacred stepping stone to a greater divine purpose. Reflect also on the story of Peter walking on water in Matthew chapter 14, verse 22 to 33. When Peter focused on Jesus, he walked on the water, but when he looked at the storm, he began to sink. Jesus immediately reached out and saved him, reminding us that even in our darkest moments, keeping our eyes on Christ brings us through the storm. This story encourages us to maintain our faith and trust in God's intervention, no matter how turbulent our circumstances. Additionally, the story of King Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles chapter 20 verse 1 to 30 offers a profound example of divine intervention. When faced with a vast army, Jehoshaphat and the people of Judah sought the Lord. God instructed them to stand firm and see the deliverance he would bring. The Lord set ambushes against their enemies, and Judah emerged victorious without having to fight. This story teaches us that faith in God's intervention can lead to miraculous outcomes, even when the odds seem insurmountable. The New Testament also highlights the story of the man born blind in John chapter 9. Jesus healed him, showing that even lifelong afflictions can be transformed by divine intervention. This miracle underscores the belief that no matter how long we have suffered, God's power can bring about profound change and light into our lives. In our journey of faith, it's crucial to remember that we are not alone. We are part of a larger community of believers who can support and uplift each other in times of need. Sharing the message of God's faithfulness and spreading hope and encouragement to those around us is a powerful act of love and compassion. Encourage your friends, family, and anyone who might need a reminder of God's transformative power to join you in this journey. Let us lift each other up in faith, offering words of encouragement and acts of kindness that reflect the love of Christ. Consider the early church in Acts chapter 2, verse 42 to 47. The believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, fellowship, breaking of bread, and prayer. They shared everything they had, supporting one another in faith and material needs. This sense of community and mutual support is a powerful example of how we, too, can lift each other up in our faith journeys. By coming together, we can create a nurturing environment where everyone feels supported and encouraged. In today's world, we have many ways to build and maintain this sense of community. Online platforms, church groups, and local gatherings provide opportunities to connect with fellow believers. Share your faith experiences, offer prayers for one another, and be a source of encouragement in both good times and bad. By supporting each other, we can strengthen our collective faith and draw closer to God. Think of modern-day communities, such as support groups or church small groups, where people gather to share their struggles and triumphs. These groups provide a safe space for individuals to be vulnerable and receive encouragement. They reflect the biblical principle of bearing one another's burdens. As mentioned in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. In practical terms, this can mean reaching out to someone who is struggling, offering to pray with them, or simply being a listening ear. Acts of kindness, such as helping a neighbor with groceries or sending a note of encouragement, can make a significant difference. By embodying the love of Christ in our actions, we can uplift those around us and create a ripple effect of positivity and faith. Consider the story of Ruth and Naomi. When Naomi was left destitute and grieving, Ruth chose to stay with her, saying in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God." Ruth's loyalty and support provided Naomi with hope and companionship. Their relationship exemplifies the power of supporting one another through life's challenges. In today's context, we can also see examples of community support in action. Think of how communities come together after natural disasters, offering help, shelter, and resources to those in need. These acts of compassion and solidarity reflect God's love and the strength of a united faith community. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more inspiring content that nourishes your soul and strengthens your faith. Together, we can build a community that supports and uplifts one another, drawing closer to God with every step we take. May God's blessings be with you as you journey through life with faith, hope, and love. Comment Amen if you feel the power of His presence guiding you. Additionally, consider the example of Paul and the Thessalonians. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, Paul encourages the believers to encourage one another and build each other up. The early Christian communities thrived on mutual support, encouragement, and shared faith. This example shows us the importance of fostering a supportive and uplifting community, where members feel valued and strengthened in their faith journey. In our daily interactions, we can embody this spirit by offering a kind word, a prayer, or a helping hand. Whether it's volunteering at a local charity, participating in a church outreach program, or simply being there for a friend in need, our actions can significantly impact those around us. By living out the love of Christ in tangible ways, we not only support our community but also deepen our own faith. Reflect on the life of Barnabas, known as the son of encouragement. In Acts chapter 9, verse 26 to 27, Barnabas vouched for Paul when the disciples were afraid to accept him. His encouragement and support were instrumental in integrating Paul into the early Christian community. Barnabas' actions remind us of the powerful impact encouragement can have in fostering unity and strengthening faith. Also, the story of the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10, verse 25 to 37 exemplifies the essence of community support. The Samaritan, moved with compassion, helped a man beaten and left for dead by the roadside, providing care and financial support. This parable teaches us to extend kindness and support to those in need, regardless of their background, embodying the love of Christ in our actions. Think of the early Christian community's practice in Acts chapter 4, verse 32 to 35, where they shared possessions to ensure no one was in need. This selfless support exemplifies how communities can thrive through mutual aid and encouragement, reinforcing the importance of unity and love in faith communities. Open your hearts to pray with me and seek God's healing touch. Dear Lord, as I come to you in prayer, I lift up to you all the struggles and suffering in my life. There are so many problems that I am facing, and I feel overwhelmed and helpless. But I know that you are the God of all comfort, and that you are able to heal me and guide me through these difficult times. Lord, I pray for healing from all the physical, emotional, and spiritual pain that I am experiencing. I ask that you touch me with your healing hand and remove all sickness and disease from my body. I also ask that you heal me from any emotional wounds or mental distress that I'm facing. Help me to find peace and comfort in your loving embrace and to trust in your plan for my life. Lord, I know that you see and understand all my struggles. You know the weight of my worries and the depth of my pain. So I ask that you give me the strength and courage to face my problems and overcome them. Help me to persevere through the challenges of life and to keep my eyes fixed on you. I also pray for all those who are going through similar struggles. Help them to find hope and healing in you. Please be with them in their darkest moments and guide them towards the light. Give them the strength and courage to face their problems and the wisdom to know how to overcome them. Consider the prayer of Jabez in 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 10. Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, "Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me, and keep me from harm, so that I will be free from pain." And God granted his request. This simple yet powerful prayer shows that God listens to our sincere cries for help and is ready to bless and protect us. Lord, I ask that you pour out your blessings upon me and my loved ones. Help us to experience your love and grace in abundance and to see your goodness in all aspects of our lives. I pray that you bless us with good health, success, and prosperity. I also pray that you grant us the grace to live our lives in a way that honors you. Finally, Lord, I thank you for all the blessings in my life. I am grateful for your love and mercy, and for the gift of salvation that you have given me. Help me to live my life in a way that glorifies you and to be a blessing to others. I pray that you would guide me and direct my steps, and that you would use me to bring hope and healing to those around me. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen. On the New Testament, Jesus often healed people who came to him in faith. In Mark chapter 5, verse 34, he tells a woman healed from a bleeding disorder, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." This demonstrates the power of faith in seeking God's healing and the peace that follows. In our everyday lives, we see God's healing and strength manifest in various ways. Consider someone who has faced a severe health diagnosis and, through prayer and medical intervention, experiences miraculous healing. Their testimony can inspire others to trust in God's healing power. Likewise, stories of people finding emotional and mental healing through their faith and the support of their community illustrate God's comprehensive healing touch. Think of a person struggling with addiction who, through faith-based recovery programs and the support of a faith community, finds freedom and a new lease on life. These modern-day miracles show that God's healing touch is not limited to physical ailments but extends to all aspects of our being, offering wholeness and restoration. Furthermore, in James chapter 5, verse 14 to 15, it says, "Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up." This passage reinforces the power of communal prayer and faith in seeking God's healing. On the Gospels, we see Jesus' healing power repeatedly, such as when he healed the paralytic man brought to him by friends in Mark chapter 2, verse 1 to 12. The man's friends demonstrated great faith by lowering him through the roof to reach Jesus. Jesus responded to their faith by forgiving the man's sins and healing his paralysis. This story underscores the importance of faith in community and experiencing God's healing power. Additionally, consider the story of Hezekiah in 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 1 to 6. When Hezekiah was terminally ill, he prayed to God, and God granted him 15 more years of life. This powerful testimony of God's healing mercy reminds us that fervent prayer and faith can lead to divine intervention and miraculous healing. Reflect also on the healing of the centurion's servant in Matthew chapter 8, verse 5 to 13. The centurion expressed great faith, believing that Jesus could heal his servant with just a word. Jesus marveled at his faith and granted his request. This story shows us that strong faith, even in seemingly hopeless situations, can lead to miraculous healing. Consider also the story of Naaman in 2 Kings chapter 5. Despite his initial reluctance, Naaman followed Elisha's instructions to wash in the Jordan River, resulting in his healing from leprosy. This narrative highlights how obedience and faith in God's word can bring about profound healing and transformation. May God's blessings be with you as you embrace Christian motivation and live a life of faith. As we journey through life, let us remember the power of prayer, the importance of gratitude, and the wisdom of trusting in God's timing. Let us find light in the darkness and embrace the promise of redemption. By lifting each other up in faith and sharing the message of God's love, we can build a community of support and encouragement. May God's blessings be with you, my dear friends. As you navigate the ups and downs of life, trust in His plan, surrender to His will, and find peace in His presence. Comment Amen if you believe in the power of His love and grace. May God's blessings be with you. In summary, as we reflect on the principles of prayer, gratitude, trusting in God's timing, and finding light in darkness, we recognize the importance of Christian motivation in our lives. By surrendering to God, expressing gratitude, patiently waiting for His perfect timing, and trusting in His divine intervention, we draw closer to Him and discover His profound love and guidance. Let us support and encourage one another, building a strong community of faith that exemplifies the teachings of Christ. May these reflections inspire you to deepen your relationship with God and live out your faith with renewed strength and purpose. Remember the story of Anna in Luke chapter 2, verse 36 to 38. Despite her advanced age and years of widowhood, Anna remained devoted to God, fasting and praying in the temple. Her faithfulness was rewarded when she witnessed the baby Jesus, fulfilling her long-awaited hope. This story encourages us to remain steadfast in our faith, knowing that God's blessings will come in His perfect time. Reflect also on the promise in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. This assurance from God reminds us that His plans for our lives are filled with hope and purpose, encouraging us to trust in His divine timing and perfect will.